I'm Professor Sagewell, and today we're uncovering the real story behind one of the most important events in history. How did World War II really start? You may have heard that it all began when Germany invaded Poland. That's true, but it's only part of the story. To understand how the world was pulled into its second global war, we need to go back, not just a few months, but decades, because this wasn't just about one invasion. It was about broken promises, rising dictators, deep anger, and a world still recovering from the last war. So let's travel back in time and uncover how World War II really began. First, we have to rewind to the year 1918, the end of World War I. The war had left much of Europe shattered. More than 16 million people were dead, cities were destroyed, and entire economies had collapsed. Germany had lost the war, and in 1919 it was forced to sign a peace agreement called the Treaty of Versailles. This treaty blamed Germany for starting the war, and it came with a long list of punishments. Germany had to give up land, shrink its military, and pay enormous amounts of money, called reparations, to other countries. Many Germans were angry and humiliated. They believed the treaty was unfair and that it had crippled their nation. The economy collapsed. People couldn't find jobs. Money became nearly worthless, and families went hungry. This created the perfect storm for frustration, fear, and eventually dangerous new ideas. While Germany was in crisis, other countries weren't doing much better. In the 1930s, the world was hit by a terrible economic crash known as the Great Depression. Banks failed, businesses closed, and millions of people around the world lost their jobs. When people are scared and struggling, they often look for someone who promises to fix everything. That's when dangerous leaders began to rise. In Italy, a man named Benito Mussolini took power and turned the country into a dictatorship. He promised to make Italy strong again, but ruled with force and fear. In Japan, military leaders took over the government and believed Japan should conquer other lands to gain power and resources. And in Germany, a former soldier named Adolf Hitler rose to power. He led the Nazi Party, a group that blamed Germany's problems on outsiders, especially Jewish people. Hitler promised to rebuild the economy, restore national pride, and make Germany powerful again. But his vision of power was built on hate, lies, and violence. In 1933, Hitler became Chancellor of Germany and quickly turned democracy into dictatorship. He outlawed other political parties, took control of the media, and used secret police to silence anyone who disagreed. And then, step by step, he began preparing for war. Hitler's first move came in 1936, when he sent German troops into a region called the Rhineland. That land had been taken away from Germany after World War I, and the treaty said they weren't allowed to put troops there. But Hitler did it anyway. And the world did nothing. Britain and France saw the move as risky, but they didn't want another war, so they stayed quiet, and Hitler took note. In 1938, Hitler demanded that Germany be allowed to take over Austria, a neighbouring country where many people spoke German. He claimed it would unite the German people, and again, no one stopped him. German troops marched into Austria without firing a shot. Austria became part of Nazi Germany. Next, Hitler turned his attention to a region of Czechoslovakia called the Sudetenland. He said the people there were mostly German, so the land should belong to Germany. Britain and France met with Hitler in a meeting called the Munich Conference. And instead of saying no, they agreed to let Hitler take the Sudetenland. This decision was part of a strategy called appeasement. That means giving someone what they want to avoid conflict. But instead of keeping the peace, it showed Hitler that the world was afraid of standing up to him. Just 6 months later, Hitler broke his promise and took over the rest of Czechoslovakia. This time, there was no excuse and no attempt to pretend it was peaceful. It was clear Hitler wouldn't stop on his own. Meanwhile, he had his eyes on his next target, Poland. But there was one problem. Poland sat between Germany and the Soviet Union. Hitler didn't want to fight a war on two fronts, both west and east. So in August of 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union signed a secret agreement called the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. They promised not to attack each other and secretly agreed to split Poland in two. Just 1 week later, on September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Tanks rolled across the border. Planes bombed cities. German troops moved fast using a brutal strategy called blitzkrieg, or lightning war. 2 days later, on September 3rd, Britain and France declared war on Germany. World War II had officially begun, but it didn't stop there. Just over 2 weeks later, the Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east. Poland was crushed between two powerful enemies, and still, many other countries remained on the sidelines. The United States wasn't part of the war yet. Neither were most of Asia, Africa, or Latin America. But that would change soon, because the war was only just beginning. While Hitler was taking over parts of Europe, another country was expanding its power on the other side of the world. That country was Japan. Since the 1930s, Japan had been invading nearby countries, especially China. They wanted land, resources, and control. In 1940, Japan joined Germany and Italy to form a military alliance called the Axis Powers. Now the world faced threats on multiple sides, with Germany in Europe and Japan in the Pacific. And even though war had officially begun, the United States was still trying to stay out of it. Most Americans didn't want to get involved in another overseas conflict, but that changed on one shocking day, December 7th, 1941. That morning, Japanese planes launched a surprise attack on the US naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The attack destroyed battleships, sank dozens of aircraft, and killed more than 2,400 Americans. The next day, the United States declared war on Japan, and a few days later, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. At that moment, World War II became truly global. So, why did so many countries get involved? Some joined because they were attacked. Others joined to defend their allies. And some entered the war to protect their colonies or fight against invading forces. Nations from Africa, Asia, Oceania, and the Americas all became part of the conflict. This wasn't just a European war anymore, it was a world war, in every sense. But this war wasn't just bigger than the first one, it was also different. World War I had been fought mostly in trenches, with slow advances and heavy losses. But in World War II, technology had changed. There were faster tanks, powerful airplanes, aircraft carriers, and radar. For the first time in history, entire cities were bombed from the sky. Civilians, not just soldiers, were in danger. Schools, hospitals, and homes became targets. More than 60 million people died during World War II, and many of them were not part of any army. And perhaps the most horrifying difference of all was something called the Holocaust. Under Hitler's rule, the Nazis set out to destroy entire groups of people, especially Jews. They built concentration camps where millions were murdered. Over 6 million Jewish people were killed, along with millions of others, including Roma people, people with disabilities, and political opponents. This wasn't just a war of armies. It was a war that targeted cultures, identities, and lives. World War II showed what can happen when hateful ideas are allowed to grow, and when the world waits too long to stand up to cruelty. Let's review the key events that built up to World War II, step by step. Think of it like a row of dominoes, one event knocking over the next. 1919. The Treaty of Versailles ends World War I and punishes Germany. 1920s. Germany's economy collapses. People are angry, poor, and desperate. 1933. Hitler becomes Chancellor and quickly turns Germany into a dictatorship. 1936. German troops march into the Rhineland, so a bold move that breaks the treaty. 1938. Germany takes over Austria and part of Czechoslovakia. Britain and France try to avoid war through appeasement. 1939. Hitler invades the rest of Czechoslovakia, then makes a secret pact with the Soviet Union. On September 1st, Germany invades Poland. Britain and France declare war. World War II begins. 1940. Germany conquers much of Europe. Japan joins the Axis powers. 1941. Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. The United States joins the war. All of these moments built on each other, and together, they pushed the world into a war that would last 6 years and change history forever. Let's see how much you remember with a quick quiz. Question 1. What treaty ended World War I and punished Germany? Answer the Treaty of Versailles. Question 2. Who became the dictator of Germany in 1933? Answer Adolf Hitler. Question 3. What was the name of the agreement where Britain and France gave in to Hitler's demands? Answer appeasement. Question 4. What event caused Britain and France to declare war on Germany? Answer Germany's invasion of Poland in 1939. Question 5. What event caused the United States to enter World War II? Answer the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. World War II didn't start with a single decision. It began with a long series of choices, some made out of fear, some out of anger, and some out of ambition in Saar. It's a reminder that history is shaped not just by one person or one moment, but by all the events that come before it. Classroom discussion question. If you could go back in time, what decision would you change to try and prevent World War II? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your ideas. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new today, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss our next episode of The Curious Professors. Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay curious, and keep asking great questions.